switch to a different.
We're starting again.
Okay.
Okay, because I have to record to the cloud, not my computer. Trust me.
Okay.
So, welcome to the Ann Leighton Inclusion Interview Show. This is where we talk about the difference between kindness and cruelty with an emphasis on kindness. And my guest is the multi talented Peppy Castro, writer, producer, performer, instrumentalist, actor, friend to many, Peppy Castro. Peppy, how are you?
I am a kindness devotee.
Yes, you are.
So we're in good company. Yeah, and I'm
Absolutely.
well. Thank you, Annie. No,
You you
it's nice to see you here amongst, yes, the cyber world, the globe, the world's forever changed. So
abs
here
I
we go.
know. I want to let folks know about some of the bands that you've been in. They
Yeah.
include the Blues Magoos, Barnaby by Balance, Alessi. You guys chose names at the beginning of the alphabet. I know why you did that.
Well, yeah, I know. I think I've had a fixation with the letter B because
Mhm.
you know, well, balance it is really one of my most favorite works. There was just such great people involved with balance, and one day I was sitting at the in front of a stereo system, and I noticed the balance knob on it, and I went, "Oh, balance! Oh yeah, at two ears. That's everything we mix is balanced left and right." And then I started thinking, "Oh, the balance of nature, uh,
Right.
the weight, the legal things about balance," and I just fell in love with that name. And I mean, originally the original band started out, well, Bob Kulick, and Bob
Yes.
Bob passed away, sadly. But uh, Balance started because Paul Stanley walked into my apartment one day with Bob Kulick and said, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Bob Kulick." And I looked at Bob and I went, "I know this guy." And it turned out that I knew Bob from about 15 years earlier, growing up in Greenwich Village. And
Wow.
I used to see him walking around the village all the time. So anyway, needless to say, we went on and started Balance with another great musician, Doug Katsaris, and then Andy Newmark. Uh,
Mm.
Willie Weeks was involved. Everybody was involved in the front. So that was great. And that was actually my third band. Obviously, the Magoos are the most well known, but
Yep.
Balance does have a very cult status in Europe, and we did have a top 20 in the U.S. So that was nice.
I think I played them in Buffalo Radio, which would have been about 1980 to 81.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah, it
think
was like number 22 or something like that on the
y
charts
yeah,
in 81.
we were an album progressive radio station, so we're pretty
See,
well.
I learn more things about you every time we talk.
Well, here's something also trippy, because the neighborhood in the Bronx that you used to live in, I moved there way after you left the neighborhood,
Yeah, yeah.
diagonally across the street from where you used to live, so that's and then the other
Ow.
thing we have in common
Wow.
is we both worked with Jay and the Americans about the same time.
Oh my God.
You were bass?
I what no what happened was I and when they reformed as the
Yeah.
original members, there was I don't know if you know the whole story involved
Uh,
with that and Jay Black and all that. That was
yeah,
pretty
Jay
pretty
Reineke
pretty
wanted to buy
pretty
the
pretty amazing. And because they never owned their masters, they came to me, and I, in my studio in my house in New York, I re-recorded every hit record they ever had. I did like four CDs
Oh,
with them. And with the new Jay, who's now been there for like 18 years,
yeah.
Renke, Jay, John J. Renke. And so I literally played most of the instruments on that stuff, with the exception of strings and horns, which we had session people come in. But I recorded every one of those songs. Let's Lock the Door, This Magic Moment, you name it. All their
Come a
great
little
Come a
closer.
Little Bit Closer. I mean, all that stuff. So what happened was after I put all those records together, this way they could have merch to sell and they didn't have to buy their own records back from the
Right.
label. And so they said, gee, Peppy, you did all this stuff. Would you come out on the road with us? And I said, as long as there's a back line and I don't got to lug anything and I can just walk on with my little guitar, whatever. So I did half a year with them as the guitar player. And then they were like, well, we love the way you play bass more than guitar. So then I did another half the year playing bass for them. And so that was a lot of fun. You know, I really enjoyed it because I got to meet people I hadn't seen in 40, 50 years. I mean, people like, can you imagine Clay Cole before he passed away? Do you know Clay Cole?
I don't know Clay Cole.
Oh my God, Clay Cole, the Clay Cole when I was a child coming up as the Magoos had the biggest local TV show in the New York market, the Clay Cole Show.
Oh, cool.
It came in on WPIX 11, and it was like, that was it. Everybody saw the Clay Cole Show. And so to 50 years later, I'm in a gig in Florida with all these old acts. And who's emceeing it but Clay Cole? And he was the first TV show I ever did
Oh, wow.
with the
Was that as
Magoos.
the Blues Magoos? Okay.
Yeah, he was also the first TV show I believe that Richie Havens did. And so that was amazing. And then of course there were all the other acts. Peter Noon and I, you know, we were tour mates in
Oh, Peter
19
Newton, Herman's Hermits.
yeah, we were tour mates. It was the big tour of 1967. It was the Blues Magoos opened, the Who followed, and then Herman's Hermits. And we sold out all summer long. We all went on the same plane. We were like one big family for the whole summer of 1967. It was absolutely amazing. And that's where I started out. So I became so much closer with Peter after all that time. And we're close buddies now to this day. And
Oh,
so it was nice. And then I'd see acts that I came up with as a kid, you know, like Little Anthony and all these Bobby Rydell. And I was a kid in a candy store.
yeah, yeah.
It
Totally.
was great seeing all those people.
Well, one of the first places I heard of the Blues Magoos was on the Lenny K Nuggets album. And some of those bands, and I know rest in peace, the Electric Prunes, rest in peace, James Lowe, but
Yeah.
they were also a great band on that one.
Well, that was the beauty of that era because there's not an there's not a band that didn't show up on the radar that Magoo's probably didn't share a stage with. I mean, you're talking Love, The Seeds, The Electric Coons, Strawberry Alarm Clock. I mean, we were all out there, you know. Oh my God, Buffalo Springfield. I mean, there
Wow.
was all the bands, Janis Joplin. I mean, on and on and on and on. We all gigged together, you know, and even, you know, we were talking before we went on air here about all the people we lost in the recent months,
Right.
and the first time I met Lou Christie was in 1967, and we were on big shows, and there was a big promoter down in the South who had like 6 or 7 venues all throughout the South, and he owned a bunch of radio stations. And back in those days, if you did a show, it was like Murray the K. There were like 10 acts
Sure.
on the bill. And I remember because when I was a kid and Lightning Strikes came out, I mean, I was singing that
Yeah, yeah,
song.
yeah. You got it.
I was singing that song forever as a kid before I even picked up, you know, a guitar or before I even went to the Magoos. And now here the Magoos are with the top 10 single,
Right.
and we're playing down south, and all my Mercury label mates are on there. Oh, what was that? Oh my God, she was the she was the singer. I forget her name right now.
Dusty
It's
Springfield.
Leslie.
Leslie Gore. No.
Yes. And Leslie Gore was on Mercury. Mamas and the Papas were on Mercury. All these, and I knew Mama Cass from the village, from at the Night Owl Cafe, where she was a waitress.
Wow.
So all this kind of stuff. And we'd get on all these bills, and I hadn't heard about Lou Christie maybe for a year and a half or two, something like that. And who was the headliner down there?
Lou.
Lou Christie. I couldn't believe it. Jefferson Airplane around this thing. We're all these acts, and who closed the show? Lou Christie. I was like, oh, son of a
What a
gun.
showman, too.
Oh yeah, he was wonderful, such a sweetheart guy. And then all the shows I did with the Jays, Lou was on a lot of these dates. So it would be like, oh my God, and then we became close again in the last 10 years, just from all those dates I did with Jay and the Americans running
Well,
around. So it is a small community.
it is. And the whole New York City scene. Initially, I met you at a party on the Upper West Side near Columbia University, I think.
Oh my
And
God.
there was but it was like there were named people, and that Mason Reese, the actor, was there, the
I'm
Borgish man.
probably seeing Mason tomorrow night. Mason and
Oh,
I hang out. We hang out all the time.
how
And
funny.
so there's Mason and I, a wonderful singer named Robin Beck.
Robin Beck. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I interviewed her when we were in the 80s at Hit Parader. Yes.
Well, Robin just got a deal with Frontiers in Europe.
Sweet.
And I'm writing her a song right now for her new record. And her and her husband love it. Her husband's is James Christian, who was in the band House of Lords.
Oh my God. Yes.
And James is a great talent too. And so Robin, Mason, Louis Levin, and I, we get together monthly in Delray Beach.
But
Monthly.
that's totally what it is, because we're just connected, and we want to keep those connections and go bowling together
Yeah.
or whatever.
So we
Absolutely.
had a birthday party for Mason a month or two ago. And you probably know Matt DeMatt. Do you know Matt DeMatt?
From a long time ago.
Yeah, New
I
York,
know
the
of
clubs,
him.
the whole thing. So, well, it's Matt's birthday tomorrow. So I'm sure, since Matt was at Mason's birthday, I'm sure I'll be seeing Mason tomorrow night.
But what you're describing, even though this is happening down south in Florida, what you're describing is what we would always go through in New York,
Oh
or
yeah.
still go through in New York, because we're going
Well,
to parties, we're
yeah,
schmoozing.
New York had so many scenes.
Yeah.
There was
I mean,
so
before,
many eras there between the West Village and then CBGB's and then the Warhol at the at all these places.
right, right.
Even
The East
back to
Village.
the early Village, there was a club called Nobody's that everybody went
Oh,
to
yeah.
all the time. I mean, there was so many. It was endless, and I'm born and raised. So I was actually born in Manhattan, raised in the Bronx from 4 to 14. And then I left
Hmm.
home at 14, migrated down to the Village. By the time I'm 17, the Magoos were a top 10 recording act. So I was rather privileged.
Where did the Blues Magoos rehearse?
We rehearsed in the basement of the Hotel Albert, the Albert Hotel
Oh,
on 10th
wow.
on 10th and University Place. And that's where I've been writing a book for 6 years. And it's called The Prince of MacDougal Street, because
Okay.
Alan Merrill, who I'm sure you know,
Yep. And
right?
I met him
Yeah,
through
another good guy. I was doing a radio interview with Alan, and Alan comes out and goes, "Oh, well, Peppy's the Prince of MacDougal Street." And I went, "What?" And Alan goes, "Peppy, you're the Prince of MacDougal Street." I said, "Alan, what are you talking about?" He goes, "You never heard that?" I said, "You're telling me 45 years later I'm the Prince of MacDougal Street?" He goes, "Yeah, man, everybody called you." I said, "I never heard that a day in my life." He
But
said,
you
"Peppy,"
liked it.
he said, "Peppy, when you would be in the Night Owl Cafe and you would get off stage, you would walk out of the Night Owl and you'd walk around the corner of 3rd and MacDougal. And when you passed us, because we'd all be hanging out on the corner, everybody would say, that's Peppy Magoo. He's the Prince of McDougal Street
Peppy Magoo.
because I was probably the youngest guy in the whole scene back then, you know.
Ah, so you
And
couldn't walk
so
through the bar.
so I said to so now I'm just embraced it. I'm like, okay, the Prince of McDougal Street, a psychedelic pioneer, you know, and I have all these amazing stories of, you know,
Yeah, you do.
the Albert Hotel. I mean, all these bands used to play there. The songs that were written in there, the Mamas and the Papa, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I mean, everybody. This was like the equivalent of the Chelsea, right in the heart of the West Village. So
Yeah,
it was a very famous thing. But we rehearsed there, and of course, we could always rehearse in the clubs in the village
sure.
because they didn't pay you much and they let you sit and rehearse in there during the day. The night owl would even um, encourage all the bands to rehearse on a Sunday afternoon so he could make money. The kids would come in and they'd have their ice cream floats and their coffee house stuff, and they'd get to see the bands rehearsing on a Sunday afternoon.
It's amazing. And the kids would come into the clubs and see the bands rehearsing. And here we are 40 years, 50 years later,
Yeah,
and we don't have kids coming. I mean, NYU is right there, Fashion Institute, and a couple of other colleges.
sure,
We're
sure.
close enough to the village, and
Oh
we've
yeah.
closed down so many of the bars. I mean, and it's bars that are running in the clubs, not
Well, the part of what's in my book is that I was so young that when I went down to the village, I, in hindsight now, realized that I witnessed the village going from folk to electric.
true.
See, because all the coffee houses had Dave Van Ronk, Phil
Yeah,
Oakes, Freddie Neal, Tim Hardin, Odetta, all these people, Zimmerman, Dylan, they
right.
were all doing the coffee houses. And once the British invasion happened, all these little clubs started springing up and then having bands come in. So, and the deal was the only place that you worked to get into was the Night Owl Cafe. So
Oh, wow.
the Magoos migrated down there, and we'd play the Village Music Hall and the Cafe Bazaar. And these were all like, you were a second class citizen in those places. But eventually, by working all these clubs, we finally got into the Night Owl, and then we were in rotation with all the bands, the Magicians, the Love and Spoonful, all these
Wow.
bands, the Left Bank, all these bands that came out of the village.
Who
So
managed you guys then?
we had two guys named Long Hair Productions, which was a guy named Bob Wild and Art Polhemus.
Huh.
Bob was a singer songwriter, a real go getter, and Artie was an engineer who was affiliated with Regent Sound Studio, which was a guy named Bob Lifton on 57th Street. I remember recording in Manhattan, and the scene was so young that the local guys from the Musicians Union 802 would
Yeah.
be in the session, making sure you had a union card and making sure that you didn't overdub, you didn't double on an instrument, because if
Oh,
you
wow.
did, you were keeping another musician out of
You were
work.
keeping it, and
And
nowadays that's what we all do.
I mean, that's like horse and buggy time.
Yeah, but I think also the economy of the music makers was so different, and we
Yeah.
really did have less people in control of making music.
Yeah, so when the Magoos started recording up at Regent Sound, 8-track had just come in. That was like the big new thing. So we recorded the band live, and the only thing we overdubbed was the vocals and maybe some lead guitar, because we only had 8 tracks. So everything was really, not like today. I mean, today, oh my God,
Yeah.
I can blink and put together God knows what. And then, 10, 20 years ago with sampling and all that kind of stuff. I mean, most of these people making records today are not musicians.
I'm not a musician. per se. I can write songs,
Yeah,
but
but I'm saying, but the people
yeah,
making money and recording, they're just grabbing samples and loops
yeah. Well, that's
from
true.
libraries that are huge, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm not. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and they're
So, you know,
interesting enough records.
I
But
mean,
and
I
we're also
am
using our computers with mixing boards this big, whereas
crazy. I
yeah,
mean, I embraced the digital world with technology coming in because I had a very long career writing and singing jingles
yeah.
and commercials. So to me, if I didn't embrace the technology, I was going to be left behind. And
So
so I did, and it definitely worked in my favor
yeah,
because if I wrote a song and I played all the instruments on it and it went to air, then I got paid as all the musicians and everything else because I played all the instruments. And by being in bands all these years, I was able to pick up other people's instruments. You know, like being a guitar player, I could always go to the keyboard and go, "Hey, what are you playing there? Well, what's that? Okay, well, if this is an E minor chord for me, what's it on the keyboard? And so
right, right.
I started teaching myself piano, and then I started saying, okay, let me understand the difference between bass and a guitar bass.
Sure.
Like a lot of guitar players plays bass, but when you really get the finger thing down and you start playing real bass, it's a whole different strategy and world. And I always had rhythm and I always wanted to play drums, so I can play drums. I can program all my digital stuff. And most
Right.
people ask me who's playing drums, and I'll go like, yeah, that's
But you know what though? That's yeah, and what you said earlier, that's adapting to what is needed and the reality of budgets nowadays because like I said earlier, music was a harder a more selective commodity then and you
well, it
had
was real.
less music for more money and now we have more music for less money.
Oh, but now the world's in chaos with music
Yeah.
because you have AI,
Yep.
and AI is the worst thing in the world and the best thing in the world. So it's a matter of, how it's going to be applied. I mean, there are a million lawsuits going on right now just to the AI companies because the only way AI learns is by content,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
imagine you have a pit bull, right? If you have a pit bull and you're a very loving person and you give that dog nothing but love, you're going to have a beautiful dog. But if you have a,
Probably.
but if you have a pit bull and you're some crazy sleazebag evil guy who's just pure evil and he's smacking the dog around and teaching it to kill people, you're going to have a monster on your hands. So it's the same thing with AI. It depends on
Yeah.
the content that's going in because it learns and then it learns more and more and then it overtakes everything. So to me, it's a very dangerous thing. And right now, the lawsuits going on are copyright lawsuits because the AI companies are stealing content that's intellectual property and they're not paying them anything for it. Yet it's the base of what
Right.
they're going to be teaching entire generations. So
Yeah.
this stuff it's going to be in the courts for a long, long time because it's unregulated right now, you know.
Well, there's a lot that we can't regulate, especially, I mean, I think the whole reason we went, the US government went against TikTok is because it originated in Japan. It was, or China,
In China, yeah.
Chinese owners.
Oh yeah.
And we
I
can't,
don't I don't go on TikTok.
I
I
don't
I
either.
don't go, and I'll use AI graphically for templates for myself because I have
Right.
a lot of projects. I have a lot of musicals I've written and things that I want to do. And with the invention of AI, it's easier for me now to put a better presentation together. I'm not advocating that I use the AI, but I'm
Right.
using it for demo purposes. But I refuse to do it in my music. It's just like,
Well,
go
yeah.
ahead.
I use AI to help me with my taxes. These are the types of expenses I had this year. What forms do I need for the state and federal
Well,
government?
that's the thing. I mean, these kids, they're not even working. They're just going to GPT and they're going like,
Yeah.
write me a lyric for this, and then boom, in 2 seconds, all the stuff is there. I mean, it's
Shame
like
on them.
scary.
Yeah.
But so that's the way of the world. So I'm glad I had my days,
Me
if you
too.
will,
But
you know,
the other
because
thing,
I witnessed the best time of the, to me, the century for music. I mean, the 60s was just
I know.
unbelievable.
But you also stayed working, and it wasn't just because that you're very good at recording and things like that. There are I, obvious things that you've done with people to
Oh,
encourage
without
them.
a
And
doubt. And it's like going to a restaurant. You have a good meal, you go back. You have a bad meal, you go, oh, that place sucks.
right, right,
So, I mean, technically, I retired maybe 20 years ago.
right,
You know,
right. And you're still doing assignments.
but the stuff still comes to me. And so I say, oh, okay, all right. So someone will call me up and commission me to write something, and they'll pay me to
Right.
write. And I go, oh, okay. And now, because I don't have a handle on anything that's going on in the world, of music, um, I have my projects. I write for myself, but I've always written for
Yeah.
myself. So, it's like Robin called me up there and said, Peppy, I got to deal with Frontiers. I got to deliver a record by January. I'd love you to work on the record. But I go, I'd be happy to. So I sat down. I wrote 2 pieces of music, and uh, one's called "What a Night," and her and her husband love it. So I said, okay, well, I didn't intentionally finish anything because I figured maybe you guys want to write it. They said, no, we love it. You keep working on the music. You keep going. I just
Oh,
worked on it
sweet.
for I just worked on it for an hour or two today, and it's great. It's a great piece of music. I'm
I
I'm I'm really happy with it. And so that's it. Fortunately, I'm a musician with a pension. You know,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
not a lot of us. But my jingle career, I did 20 years in actually writing, singing commercials while making records.
Do I know any of your jingles?
Oh God, tons,
Oh, wow. Do you want
tons.
to sing one?
Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why I love Nestle Crunch.
Oh,
Sang
wow.
that for you. Oh, you're ready. You'd never expect me to be singing this for 15 years. The quicker, thicker picker upper.
That's you,
Yeah.
Swiffer?
Actually, Lynn Ahrens wrote that one. We were a team of writers, but
Uh-huh.
we would write anything we'd win, we would all go on the contracts. As singers, we would all sing the stuff. So, I mean,
Right,
I
right.
did I did tons of Budweisers. I did everything from colognes to sodas, cars. I'm Emmy nominated for CBS Sports. I mean,
I ha Wow, I have to ask you a question because I'm working with Robin Bateau now.
oh, Robin was a mainstay, sure.
Okay, so I was wondering if like Buskin and Bateau, who did advertising,
Yeah, Buskin and Bateau, man, they were my competitors.
I was wondering what the competition was like.
Oh, fierce,
Was it fierce, ruthless?
fierce. Yeah,
And now you're friends?
my the Alessi brothers, Billy and Bobby Alessi,
Right,
my partners in Barnaby By.
right.
Billy was partners with Joey Levine at Crushing. They were huge. Bobby was with JSM, which was another big company and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so Billy and Bobby, Billy and Bobby worked together all the time, but they also were with separate music houses
So they
themselves.
were competing.
So me, Billy, and Bobby were in competition against each other for 30, 40 years. All the while we were doing Barnaby By.
That's so excellent. Excellent.
And so because I did 20 years without missing a beat, making commercials, I made the minimums of an income, which allowed me to be vested and have a pension with the Screen Actors Guild. Because
Oh
all
yeah.
this, because all the stuff that went on TV was considered film. So then SAG became my parent union before AFTRA and SAG merged even.
Sure,
But
sure.
now I get pensions from SAG, I get pensions from AFTRA, I get my own little pension, I get Social Security. So, I don't live high off the hog anymore, but I don't really have to work.
Right. And you probably have always been relatively disciplined without too many
Well, it
of
was
the
the jingle business was the most amazing discipline because look who we worked with. You know, when you had sessions, the only people who worked in jingles, especially musicians, were the best musicians in the world in New York because
yeah,
time is money. Show
time is
Steve
money.
Gadd could come in and play a jingle in 30 minutes.
Right,
To
right.
use the rock and roll guy, it may take him 2 hours. Will Lee, Neil Jason, all these guys, even uh, 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 the Chapman Stick, Tony Levin.
Tony,
Tony started out in the jingle business. He started doing jingles. Yeah, I did a lot of
he's
jingles with Tony back then.
that is the magic man though, Tony
Oh,
Levin.
well, these are icons. But what happened is the producers knew that you get the first choice. So these guys in the heyday in the jingle business would have 3 separate amounts of gear that went all
Right.
over town. They had cottage companies, so that Will Lee, before he even went over to the studio to do Letterman, would have maybe 3 or 4 jingles to do before he even did the Letterman show in one day. And so he had 3 sets of like 3 different little companies, 3 sets of gear, and he'd go, okay, yeah, send my rig over to Crushing. I have a 1 o'clock with a half with another
Right.
half, and oh, send my other gear over to Bateau and blah, blah. Send this one and that. So they'd be walking in, they'd be making music all day long, but that was the team. Paul Schaefer, Steve Gadd, Steve Jordan, Alan
Jordan.
Schwartzberg, all I mean, and then in later years, some of the newer guys started coming in and kicking butt, man, and these guys were amazing. So it was the best people money could buy because they did it fast. So
So yeah, I work with Joe Denenzone, and I swear 99%, 90% of his sessions he's doing at home in his basement with
yeah,
just in his strings. He's a string guy.
yeah, well, that's what happened. They after the heyday, it started getting split. The digital started, some guys started making studios in there. The studios started going under. The loyalties changed. In
Loyalties.
like I came up, if you won the song, if your music house won the song,
Right.
then the arrangements would stay with you. So,
Okay.
like for instance, new Bounty. I mean,
Bounty, the quicker pup.
I did Bounty for 15 years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, new Bounty Fun Prince, new Bounty this, the quicker picker upper, the quicker, I mean, so we were always doing different arrangements, country western, this and that, all the kind. Nestle Crunch, that stuff went on for years. Juicy Fruit. I had a spot, get your skis shined up, grab a stick of juicy fruit. Taste it, taste it, taste it's gonna move ya. Right? That thing
Wow.
was great because in the winter they did winter skis, and in the summer they filmed summer skis. So so this stuff would run for years and years and years, and so it was a great business to be involved with. Yet I could still make music. I could still write for songs. I could still make my records with balance and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. But nothing lasts forever, and then it starts to fall down. And then all of a sudden, the business got wise and decided, for the amount of money they're paying all these creative writers to write stuff, for the same amount of money, they can go to Bob Seger and buy like a rock
Right.
for the
Right.
for the, for the same amount of money and license a hit. I had tons of stuff with Chevy for years, Chevy
Right.
trucks, all this kind of stuff. So many different spots. It was, but I did my 20 years and I got vested. So I was, lots of times I wanted to book, but God bless my partner, kept saying, "Don't do it, don't go, don't go, stay, stay, stay. You only got a few more years left." So, so I was fortunate to have that career. It let me sit in New York. I didn't have to travel a lot. I didn't have to go, out and be on the road. I could earn
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
living, you know, and so,
Yeah.
and it was very challenging. I mean,
Yeah. And also, I think the more you don't travel, the more you like it not traveling.
well,
Um,
it's stability, and it's a gig, a real paycheck all the time. In
yeah.
records you get sums. Oh, like I got a Diana Ross on the wall over there. I had the B-side of "Missing You." Woo, I'm
Oh,
missing you. Tell me where the road turns. I wrote I wrote the B-side of "Missing You," which was a song called "We Are the Children of the World."
oh, wow.
And then I wrote the B-side of "Swept Away," which was believe I think maybe Daryl Hall wrote "Swept Away." Swept away, nothing lasts forever. And I wrote a song with Diana called "Fight for It." And
I
so
love
she
her.
put that on the B-side. I got a gold over there for Cher. Cher cut one of the songs I wrote in Barnaby By. Happy
What
was the
song?
day. Happy was the day we met, which was on her "Take Me Home" album. I had a musical in
Wow.
19. I had a musical in 1978 called Zen Boogie, which ran in Beverly Hills. It was a big hit in L.A. because L.A. wasn't a real theater town, and
Right.
Lieber Krebs, my managers, produced it out there while they had Beatlemania up at the Pantages. So it was a big hit for me. And at this point, I'm working with Kiss, I'm working with Paul Stanley, and Gene comes down to see the show, and he brings Cher, and
Ah,
she heard the song "Happy Was the Day We Met," and it reminded her of her and Sonny. And
she,
so she
yeah.
came up to me right after the show. "I love that song. Do you mind if I would record that?" I was like, "What, are you kidding me? Of course not." you know. So it was on
She's,
her "Take Me Home" album. So, so I got few things to put on the wall and stuff. So I've been very lucky. I've
yeah,
been
but
able I've been
no,
able to fly under the radar and have a life.
yeah.
You
Well,
know.
both Cher and Diana Ross are two of my ultimate
Oh
favorites.
yeah,
And
they're
we
they're
mentioned Leslie
icons.
Gore earlier, so
Yeah, and
we've had.
they were nothing but lovely to me. You
Oh,
know,
I bet they're lovely to most people.
because people would call up and go, "Oh, I hear she's a real bitch." Oh, 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 oh.
Yeah,
I
well,
go,
they say that about me too.
no. Diana was so sweet to me. She asked me to write on another song. I would drive her home to the I'd drive her over to the Netherland at the hotel on Fifth Avenue after the sessions, because she was like, "Oh, come over to the studio. Come on, we're cutting your song." I would be like, "Oh, great." So, and same thing with Cher. I mean, Cher. I had a big show up in L.A. So at that point in time, Kiss was filming the Kiss movie out in what is it? I forget what it's called,
Oh,
Phantom of the Park or something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they're sitting down in L.A. for months, and I was listen. I started Ace Frehley off on guitar.
I have a picture of you and Ace actually.
Which is hysterical. You know, let's see,
Oh,
where
hold
is he?
on. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find
Oh,
it.
that's a nice little logo. Well, I'll keep your audience entertained here. Da, 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 da. Dead space here. So we go, whoa, look at that.
I know, I know, I know.
Oh,
There,
yeah, you go.
yeah.
Yeah, he put me in his book.
I stole that from the website, but he was also from the hood in the Bronx. I had to
Oh
put.
my God. Listen, Ace Frehley was sniffing glue at 13 years old.
At DeWitt Clinton or outside?
Well, this is when he was 13. This is before I was out of there by the time he went into DeWitt Clinton.
Oh,
They,
wow.
I had this is in the book. I had a truant officer find me in the village, and they said, like, listen, you're going to get put away. You cannot be on the streets at your age, you know. And he was like, do you think your mother will? I mean, this is the short form. He goes, do you think your mother would co-sign you? Because if she co-signs with you, I can get you signed out of the school system. He goes, I can see you're not on the
Wow.
streets, you're playing music. I said, yeah, I think she'd do that. He goes, great. When are you going to be 16? This was 2 months before my 15th birthday.
Uh-oh.
I told him, well, I'm going to be 15 in 2 months. His face drops. He goes, oh, shit.
At least you were honest. Keep
The
going.
guy cut me a deal. The guy was great, man. God bless this man. He saved my life. He said, okay, I tell you what. He goes, I'll come down, pick you up at 7 a.m. on Monday morning. I will drive you up to DeWitt Clinton. I will take you in there and I will forge your birth date. And
Wow.
and he did it. He changed my birth date so that he made it so that I would be turning 16 in 2 months instead of turning 15. And my mother co-signed it and stuff like that. And because the principal, the dean of DeWitt Clinton High School, hated me because I'm in the first wave of guys wearing Beatle boots. And this guy said, you're going to sit in front of my office every single day until you cut your hair and you stop wearing those boots.
You had hair like this, an afro.
Yeah, I had, well, it was kinky and I used to get it straightened, you know. And so every day when I went to DeWitt Clinton, I had to sit outside the principal's office at his desk all day long until I cut my hair. After 2 weeks,
Jesus.
after 2 weeks, I went, fuck this. I'm not going.
Right.
And two of the Magoos, Ronnie Gilbert and Ralph Scala. Ronnie is passed now. You got a little poopy bear there. There you go.
This is Joe.
Show it. Yes. Batteries not included. So, yeah, they lived on the Grand Concourse. And instead of going to school, I would go to Ronnie Gilbert's apartment and me, Ralph, and Ronnie would learn how to play songs.
That's, you know what? I when you first said Ronnie Gilbert, so I was a folkie and Ronnie Gilbert was in the Almanac Singers, I believe. No,
Wow.
I may be wrong on that. I have to check that.
But so that was it.
With
You know,
Pete
I just
Seeger.
stopped going to school. And then the detectives tried to catch me. My mother called me up crying. The detectives are here. They're going to put you away. I literally jumped off the stage in the Night Owl Cafe at 14 years old when I saw two big guys show up who I knew were detectives because my mother had just called me that day. And I saw these two big suits go come in the door.
Right.
And I went, fuck, they're after me. I took my guitar off in the middle of a song.
Mhm.
I put it down. I jumped off the stage. I ran to the back of the Night Owl Cafe. I went out the back door into the hallway of the building. I ran up to the roof. I went out of the roof. I jumped over a few buildings and came down like 3 or 4 buildings down and ran back to the Abbott Hotel, and my heart was pumping out of my chest. And then it was the
ninja of MacDougal Street.
Yeah, and then it was literally the truant officer who finally found me, and I knew he wasn't a cop. And then when you're a city kid, you can smell the tech, who's cops and who's not. And this guy changed my life forever. He saved my life. So,
that's
and so I was literally signed out of the New York public school system 2 months before my 15th birthday.
Did you later get a degree or anything like that, or are you a pure
School of Hard Knocks? No, I was too busy. I like that. I was lecturing kids in college at 18 years old. They wanted to know how I became a rock star.
Right.
In my little Nehru outfits and
Right. The Beatles. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You went on. Yeah, and you
I've
were
got
on. Mhm.
yeah, I've got John Lennon stories in the book. I've got so many stories. And then I got a gig in the original Broadway production of Hair.
Yeah, you auditioned for Hair?
I met a girl uh, through a trombone player who's the most famous trombone player probably in the world, Tom Bones Malone,
Ah,
who who was in the Blues Brothers and was in the Letterman band for the entire run, the CBS Orchestra. Tom and I share the same birthday, which we just had a birthday last week. A week ago yesterday. Is today
ooh,
Wednesday or
happy
Tuesday?
belated.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it. So yes, I told people it's my 50th anniversary of my 26th birthday. So Tom had we lived on the same block, and Tom told me that he was making a record with this woman named Dolores Hall, who has a record deal on 20th Century Wood, and they're looking for material. Would I want to meet their producer? I said absolutely. I sat down with them. They liked my songs. They cut 4 of my songs, and Dolores was a Broadway superstar powerhouse. And
Mhm.
so she looked at me and she goes, "You'd make a great burger." And I said, "What's a burger?" She said, "That's the lead. Well, that's one of the principal roles in Hair. I'm on Broadway. I'm in Hair, and they're looking for somebody. You'd be perfect." So I went down and saw the show. Shelley Punton was an old friend of mine from the Night Owl. Shelley was
Right.
still in the show, and I saw the show. I flipped. I loved it, and so she set up an audition for me. I went in there. Um, I'll never forget it. She said, "I'll go down to the theater with you." She set the audition up for me. I said, "Great." So she lived right next to the Dakota, the building next to the Dakota on 72nd Street, and I was up on 83rd in Central Park West. So I
Sure.
went down. I met her. We took the train down to the theater, the Biltmore Theater, and about 4 or 5 blocks away from the theater, we're walking to the theater from 50th Street train station. All of a sudden, I start seeing kids lined up all over the wall. And I'm thinking to myself, this is strange. A bunch of like hippie kids here. Holy shit. And then we're getting closer and closer. And then I realized they're all auditioning. And I went, Dolores. I said, holy shit, Dolores. I said, are all these kids auditioning? She walked in, she kept going. She said, yes, but you don't have to be concerned with that. And I went, Peppy, whoop, zip it, just follow Dolores. I went
You
in,
were cool. You
I
knew how
went,
to be cool.
I went in there. I got up. They took me immediately. I sang one song where I did some vocal gymnastics, and they hired me on the spot.
Cool. What songs did you sing live in
Well,
here?
I had 2 principal roles in the show
Okay.
because Rado and Ragney, uh, Jerry Ragney and Jimmy Rado had a run of the show contract because they were the original guys who wrote the show with Galt
Right.
McDermott. So they could walk into any Hair performance anywhere in the world, as long as they got there before half hour, they could go in and do the show anywhere in the world. And so some nights I'd be on ready to go on, and they'd say, Peppy, Jerry's coming in to do the show tonight. You're playing Wolf instead of Burger. And I'd be like, oh my God. And I have to change I have to change my clothes. And all of a sudden I'm somebody else, you know. So that was crazy. But I had a principal contract for the role of Wolf, and then I had an understudy contract for the role of George Berger. So you know, yeah, I was involved in most of the big numbers in the show, and I did the show for a year and a half, 8 shows a
Who
week.
There were some famous people that went on to be famous, like Melba Moore
Oh, there's
in
tons.
here.
Diane Keaton, Melba Moore, so many people did that show that went on to great things. I did the show with guys like Ted Lange, who was Ted was one of the principals in the Love Boat series.
Oh,
He was the black the what I guess he was
yeah,
a
yeah, 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 yeah. I
yeah
know who he is.
yeah yeah yeah.
Yeah.
So there are tons of people that came in and out of that show. It spawned a lot of careers for sure, you
Oh
know.
gosh. Would you
And
do Broadway? Would you have done Broadway again? Because I looked on the Broadway internet database.
Well, you know, I got into writing more than anything. I got two properties right now. One's actually a superhero musical called X Star,
Oh, I
which
like
is
it.
yeah, which is which is, believe it or not, started with Stan Lee in
Oh,
1970. I want to say 79. I think
Bronx guy.
I started it with Stan Lee, and then Lieber Krebs couldn't cut a deal with Marvel, and so we had to. I have an original Stan Lee letterhead and notes, a little his actual typewritten notes on an old like 1950s typewriter with the stuff we were working on. I since went on many years later to write my own characters and everything else like that. And with AI now, I just, and it's a pop opera, and
No, yeah.
took me
Um,
5 years to write. And about 10 years ago, I hired all people, you know, Joe Kelly and all these different people and Marge Raymond and stuff like this. And I hired all these people to come in and sing the roles for me so that it sounds more authentic, like a cast album. And
sure.
now I just started putting a presentation together with AI um, graphics. And somebody just sent it to Marvel and Disney. Well, I'll see. That's
The
not,
whole thing about Stan Lee and being a superhero was his whole thing was to first take care of the person that was injured before they went on to achieve victory or anything like that. Take care of the hurt
yeah, well,
person.
his notes are incredible. I mean, the treasure chest for me. I've only shown one person them in the whole history that I've had them all these years, uh, from his secretary. And it's like, you know, hey Peppy, Stan wants me to have he wants you to have his original notes. He hopes this does the trick. And I was flying out to LA and sitting down with him for about 3 sessions till finally it blew up because Lieber couldn't license any of the Marvel characters. They had licensed them all out. So I was like, ugh. So
Ah,
that broke my heart. And then I saw Lynn Ahrens in the year 2000 take it on the chin. She had a show called Lucky Stiff, which was like a spoof of Weekend at Bernie's.
right.
You know, Lucky Stiff. I mean, it was a musical about this corpse, you know, and it was fabulous. But she neglected to get the rights from the book,
No, yeah. Yeah.
and they shut her down. And so when I saw that happen to her, I mean, God bless her, because she went on to now. Then she wrote. Then she got all the properties. So she's had huge success with Ragtime, Once on This Island, Zeusical, Rocky, you know, and then all the movies she's been involved in with all these Disney songs and stuff, you know. So she's an icon. She's like the new Betty Comden of Broadway. You know, she's a fabulous person. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to write my own characters. I'm going to write my own thing
Right.
because I had already had material that I had started, and I said I'm going to go it alone. So I've been sitting with it for years and years and years, and now with AI, I decided to go back to it, and I said, well, maybe now. So I have somebody who's repping me now, who's just starting to get it out now.
That's what advice, because I have this play that I could come back to every 2 or 3 years, and I picture it to have music and great dance moves and everything like that, and they're original properties. What advice do you have for someone that should be
Is it a
sticking with?
musical? I mean, my stuff are
Yeah, yeah.
operas. Mine are, it's all music. There's really no dialogue. It's just, you know, my two shows I have once called Zen Boogie was a musical. So that was good. Whereas I did a show called Rockin' the Planet, which I did in a little black box theater in San Antonio, Texas,
Wow.
which won a little award there. And then COVID hit, and I used kids, which was fabulous, you know. But it's been hard for me to get it up ever since, and that's been a pop opera. Um, I, I would think affiliate yourself with people that do it. You know, the ASCAP has a BMI workshop for theater.
I know what
Uh,
you mean.
BMI has the BMI work. ASCAP does, and then there's tons of little theater communities out there It's just you kind of got to just get affiliated and see if you can, you know, hitch up with some people that do this. I mean, obviously, the big thing is to have a producer come and option a property.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Would be the best thing, you know. But the world's very sketchy now and crazy. So I think there's so much uncertainty going on,
Yeah, and everybody has ideas
you know.
that
But
they've
little
stuck with.
little rebel theater groups or anything like that, you know.
Brilliant.
It depends what it is, you know. Start very off Broadway and see if you can get involved with some kind of things. I mean, that's how hair started. Started on the streets, you know, and
Yeah.
then worked its way up from the Cheetah to this places and that, you know. And but you know, it was an amazing show. It still plays all over the world, so you know those things are good. It depends on the property. I have a dear friend who does a tremendous amount of writing and stuff like that. She knows an awful lot of people, and I could, if you wanted to send me, I could bounce it over her. She may know somebody that she could turn you on to.
I
You,
might send you something complete.
you know, she's a workaholic, and she's a writer, so she's involved in tons and tons of properties and stuff like that. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Um,
so
I want to. You were talking before we got on, and there's so many things we can talk about, and I was
oh
going
my
to
God, please.
flash
Why
to a
that's why
TV
it's
show.
taken 6 years for me to write my book. It's like
I know, I know.
like insane.
I have a ton of writing that I haven't focused on, and this and that, and then there's a pile of poetry as well.
Yeah,
So I know exactly what you're saying,
yeah,
and
yeah. And
it's
when you're a multitasker, it's terrible.
I know. Or you and I were talking, and my initial goal of the interview was, hey, we lost some friends, let's talk about them, and yet we found a ton of different common ground topics on
Well,
so many topics.
my epiphany actually was last night
I'm
when
listening.
because I've been mildly depressed, you know,
I'm
because
hearing.
there's so many friends that I've lost in the last year or two, with a few years, you know, and half of them are younger, half of them are older, but it's like, you know, it's like every day there's somebody else going and going and going and going.
Right.
And then by the grace of God, I watched Clint Eastwood's movie The Mule
Okay.
last night, and I don't watch a lot of TV at all. But I was like, you know what? Let me just watch something here because I suffer from tinnitus. I have massive hearing loss from all this singing like this and blowing my left ear out with synthesizers and guitars and
Sure.
and headphones and in my head singing for all those years and stuff like that. So I found myself kind of like losing my purpose, you know. And then I was to the movie. I was like, okay. Part of it I was like into, and part of it I was like, this is tough to watch. But at the end, he had the song at the end of the movie, when it all comes to fruition, and it was "Don't Let the Old Man In."
What does that mean?
Don't give in to being old.
Oh, sure.
So it's like, and I went, shit. Don't let the old man in. I was like, fuck. Peppy, that's the answer. That's what you got to do. You got to get back on the horse, back on the shit. Don't get sidelined by the fact that Rick went, that this one went, that
Right.
one went, this guy went. Everybody, all your friends are dying around you. I posted on Facebook that I feel like an endangered species because everybody I know is dying. You know, James
Many people
Lowe. I
we
mean,
know.
all these people, they're all freaking dying around me. It's like, and I'm like, okay, there's how many of us are left? And
But
I'm
there
thinking,
are a number of us left.
yeah, there are, but still, but it's the playing field is thinning out radically,
Yeah.
so I found myself going, shit, okay. And then you start thinking, okay, right. You probably can't see my hands, but you'll see scars, 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 scars. I've had 8 fingers surgically messed with in 4 separate surgeries for trigger finger and both wrists for carpal tunnel, just so that I could still
Oh,
keep playing. Can I play like I used to? No. Can I sing like I used to? No. But I can still craft a great song. I can still sit in my studio,
right.
and I don't have to sing for 2 hours. If I step on the mic, I can go, okay, let me take that line over. Let me take this line over. Okay, Peppy, stand up, fucking hit it, and do that. That's the beauty of doing theater. There's no, let's take that again. There's no,
Sure.
let's take
Go
that
with
again.
it.
No, you got to go out there night after night and do that stuff live. And so I think that's why the credibility is so much for. I saw a whole thing on YouTube on oh shit on Brandon DeWild. Do you know who Brandon DeWild was?
No.
Brandon DeWild was a very famous child actor, and Brandon died in the 80s, maybe, and stuff like that, with a car accident and stuff. But he was in this movie with Alan Ladd called Shane, and he was the kid in this movie, and it spawned a whole child career for this guy. Well, Brandon and I were friends when the Magoos were coming up in the village. He
Oh,
was in a
wow.
big he was a big soap star and a big actor, but all my actor friends, they just wanted to be rock and roll stars,
Sure. Of course.
and stuff. And so I just saw this whole thing. I said, well, this is popping up. Oh, this is about a whole thing about Brandon's life and everything. And, I met a lot of guys through Brandon, like Peter Fonda and Sal Mineo. And he was part of this whole actor clique,
Right.
while I'm a rock and roll star, you know. And it was all part of like, fuck, Brandon died so long ago. Holy shit, he's been dead for 50 years. Oh my God. And he was like a buddy. I remember
Right.
going I remember going to his apartment, this old world apartment on 86th Street in Broadway, that his dad was worked in theater. You're not as an actor, but he was like a tech guy in theater. He was a stage hand, but knew his stuff. And so even that, so it's like so long. I mean, Graham Parsons was the first person to turn me on to weed.
Whoa.
You know,
And if you've ever partied with Graham, whoa.
I mean, Graham's been gone for
Yeah.
eons. You know, he used to teach me songs like "Dirty Dishes." Dirty dishes, dirty dishes. I'm losing my mind. My
I
baby
mean,
done left me and
yeah.
traveled behind. You know, from the Lonesome Pine Fiddlers. I'm in a psychedelic rock and roll band, and I'm learning country western songs from Graham.
Of course. Of course. And that's
You know,
beautiful.
it was crazy stuff. So anyway, it's I'm still here,
And we're
but
not letting the old man or
yeah,
woman
don't
get
let the
in
old
our
man
stuff.
in. That's
No,
what I heard
you're
last
right.
night.
I mean, I do physical therapy so that I can walk in a straight line and keep my
Yeah,
balance. Here we
the
go.
eyes are gonna need it soon.
They
You
need it
know,
now.
all this stuff, the things, the back, the neck pinched. I mean, on and
Yeah.
on and
Well,
on
you
and.
know what? I'm lucky I don't have back problems. I'm very
Oh,
lucky because
I
I'm
got
a
a pinch thing here, which I gotta get to an acupuncturist soon.
yeah,
It
because you're
drives
carrying
me
the
nuts.
guitar and that's like 8 pounds or something like that.
But don't let the old man in. You
Right.
know. So that's it. So I'll go to a birthday party tomorrow. Uh, um,
Oh yeah,
uh,
send my love to Mason and the gang. I think
oh yeah,
Bernie Bernard will probably be there too, if I'm not mistaken.
who's that?
Bernie Bernard, she's Mason's next door neighbor. She's a radio host
Down
on
here in Florida?
WCWP. Yeah, she lives
Oh,
down in
could
Florida
be. I
now.
must have met him then, because yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And she does her radio shows from Florida.
Listen, Leslie Gold's down here now.
I
Carmine,
know, my
Carmine,
sister.
Carmen's at it down here now.
Carmine.
Yeah, Leslie. I was an associate producer with Leslie on the Gong Show.
I know, and I
We,
did some promo for you guys
oh my
too.
God, they were the funniest things on earth. It's just
Oh,
Leslie. Leslie couldn't make a buck. She
it's
couldn't.
really hard. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
hard, and we definitely fought. And
And
she
they
was
were
also
so
doing
funny.
so much. I mean, she would bring the gong home. She would pick up that gong and lug it into a cab. So, I mean, that
Yeah,
was,
I was in the trenches with her.
yeah, I
So,
mean,
well, so I'm thrilled because when she talked about moving to Florida, she says, "I hate Florida. I want to be in Florida." You know, she's got her beautiful place on 70th, which I think now she's selling,
I don't
and
blame
so
her.
she didn't want to be down here. And I said, "Leslie, look in Lake Worth. I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of deals in Lake Worth." She goes, "No, no, no, no," because Carmen doesn't want to fly out of Palm Beach, Palm Beach Airport, because he's always flying places and there's more deals in Fort Lauderdale. Lo and behold, she finds this palatial, unbelievable place in Lake Worth. And
Which
so
she's good
she's
at.
about 15 minutes from me,
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes from me here in Lake Worth and stuff. And yeah, she throws these events. So I do all the events with her. She's so much fun, you know.
She I sometimes call her my sister because that's another person that was there when I was going through trauma with a friend.
Yeah.
She was there to give feedback, and then I would do I just respect her so much on so many levels.
Oh, she's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
that dry wit too. She's so brilliant. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I thankfully I'm very close with her. We have a really, really, really good loving relationship, which I love, you know.
You know what? It's that group of people that work really hard, that give a hoot about others, that are there for people
Oh
and
yes, it's,
don't poo-poo you when you're down. I mean, I think there's a
yeah,
difference. And we've all supported people that were not like that. And
right.
it's like, what? You don't understand why they're like that. So it's like keep, and no matter how hard you try, you just keep going back to the people.
She's a doer and
Rock it.
she has great purpose, you know.
Yeah,
She has great purpose. So the oh no, I love her dearly. So and I'm happy we go to dinner down here and all this kind of stuff.
I
Just her
know.
and I. Cameron's on the road and we'll go like, let's go to dinner. So she's one of my favorite people on earth for sure. She's great. And Carol Kay, I got mentioned Carol.
Carol, that
Carol,
Ricky,
Carol Kay, my little smushy boy. That girl was just heaven sent to me.
Chance,
Yeah. So man, I'm
Chancey.
blessed. I got a lot of really wonderful people in my life. So I can't complain any, I'm riding it out, still get to make music.
Me too. I'm with you. And we'll do this show again sometime because there's so
I
much.
can't believe how long we've been going. Where's the what have we?
It's over an hour.
Wow. Oh yeah, we're well
Yeah,
over.
it's all good. It's all
But
good.
yep, we go way back, Annie. So it's been my pleasure.
Uh, And you are a pleasure, and I want to thank you. And we'll do this again someday. And
Sounds great, and
you
I'll
are
say goodbye
loved.
to Ace behind you. Yeah, I got a few Ace stories too. All right, dear.
Oh yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
Good luck. Good luck with this stuff. It's good. And enjoyed it. We're talking shop
Yeah, that's
and
what it
life.
is.
All right,
Thank you.
dear.
Mwah.
All
Stay,
good.
may you stay forever young.
Peas and carrots.
Yes.
That's a hair thing. All right. See you later.
You too. Thanks.